Good evening and welcome to the Drive at 5 on IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station. I'm your host, Roman. We have a terrific show planned for you today. Please don't forget to stay tuned to IntellectualRadio.com's after the Drive at 5 for Warriors Talk with Rochelle at 6 p.m. Tonight, my guest is the longest serving state comptroller in Illinois history, an attorney and senator. Please give a Drive at 5 welcome back to former Senator Roland Burris. Welcome back to the Drive, sir.
Well, I'm glad to be back, Roman, and appreciate the invitation to dialogue with you a little bit.
No problem. And I see you brought your book there.
Well, yeah, that's the work that I did after leaving the United States Senate. The title of the book is "The Man Who Stood Up to Be Seated," and it says it's a controversial appointment to the United States Senate.
Oh, okay.
That's my memoirs. So
Yeah. So, in your own words, define Black leadership for us.
Well, Roman, I think you'd have to have individuals who are really committed, dedicated, know their subject matter, and can communicate that to the public. And whether it's in business, in education, in politics, or leaders, really, I think that they are, some say they're created rather than being born, and they're individuals that become trailblazers. They go where no one else dare to go. They take chances that no one else would take. And that's what leadership is all about.
Do you think Black leadership has evolved or dissipated over time?
Well, we have leaders. I mean, you go back to the time of Marcus Garvey, or some of the older individuals. I'm trying to think of the fellow who founded the NAACP. There's always been Black leadership. The one who, Frederick Douglass, really an ex-slave, who then challenged President Lincoln, and there's always been, under all circumstances, whether in any group of individuals, there's always someone who come to the forefront with the answers and solutions for the overall direction of that group of people, whether they're Black, Indigenous, or whether they're Hispanic or Latinx. They're individuals who come to the forefront with their ideas and get people to follow them. Because a leader without any followers is not a leader if nobody's following him.
What's the difference between old leadership and new leadership? We get that a lot lately.
Yeah, I mean, that comes with time in my age, because I am one of the elders now. At my age,
You're an elder?
I'm an elder.
Oh,
when you turn,
I wouldn't picture you as an
my
elder.
next birthday, I will be 85 years old.
Oh.
So you get to live. A Black man who lives past 70, is being blessed real good by the Lord, because all the stress and tribulations that we have to go through to survive and try to exercise some of our rights and show leadership, it's a big toll on your human existence. And you see a lot of Black men. That's why I use the expression. I don't know how true it is. Why they set Social Security at 65. Black men didn't live to be 65 in the 40s when they passed Social Security, because all the stress that they had on the subservient roles that the white society, caused them to play.
Do you think young Black leaders are impactful in today's society versus old Black leaders?
They are just as effective, because we have made progress. And they have to carry the mantle forward. They have to carry on what some of us started. I mean, I picked up after the Martin Luther Kings, the other individuals who were in the financial world or the political arena. I picked up on that. I started out as a young kid, 15 years old, with two goals, and that's back in the 40s. I said in 15 that I was going to do two things. One, I was going to be a lawyer, and secondly, I was going to be a statewide elected official of Illinois. In the process of moving down that track, Roman, I actually was able to, you know, demonstrate that I had the skills and the ability for people to follow me, and some of them were not necessarily black, and so that certainly would emphasize that my leadership transcended that black situation, and we have the same thing going on today. We have young black leaders that are transcending the black leadership, and they are carrying on the mantle forward. So that's what we have, and that's what we really need, because the Lord is going to take me out of here. And by the way, I think the Lord's going to get you eventually too, because you're one of those young leaders. Have you made 40 yet?
Yeah, I did.
You made 40?
Yeah.
You know, man, she done made 40. So
Yeah.
but the young people are out there, and what they should not do is ask for us old guys to step aside. But what they should do is invite us in, like you're doing now, to get the wisdom and get conversation with us, because we're, out the pasture. We're, paid our dues, but we still got a lot of knowledge and experience that we've accumulated over the years as a result of our being able to survive this long.
Let's say you are currently in office right now. What law or legislation would you create along with pushing forward to help the Black community?
Well, number one, I would certainly advocate strongly for a choice for women. I would advocate for the same issues that we're facing today, and it's the election process. I would certainly be trying to make sure that our voting rights are not suppressed, and that our economic opportunities are, still there and still available. I mean, those are the basic grassroots issues that are, that are now on the table. Oh, and I would also have a position on guns. Those are the things that are in the current psychic today and in the news today, where every day impacting the life of our citizenry. So those are some of the opinion issues. Making sure when you got all these groups that are now coming up, that's trying to turn the clock back. And I don't know if you want to get political or not, but you got these people following Donald Trump that are saying, I interpret the MAGA group as saying, make America great again. It's make America, in a situation where blacks are in their place.
There was, and I had this conversation with Charles Thomas last week, and a political reporter from ABC News.
Channel 7. I know Charles. We're good friends.
Yeah. And we talked about the senator downstate that says when Donald Trump was downstate in Illinois, and she said, make America white again.
Well, that's state representative lady. She's a congresswoman now. That was, I think she won. She beat the incumbent Republican senator. See, when they redistricted Illinois, they put Senator Davis and her in the same district. And so they had to run against each other in the Republican primary. She won. I saw the news clip where she did say that. And that just lets you know what is going on in terms of race. There is fear by some of the insecure white population. I'm not talking about the whole white population, because some of the white population is in concert with the thought that we have to let everyone have their choice, regardless to their race, creed, or color, or sexual orientation, or sex. But there's some that says we have to stay in charge. And that group is the group now that's really creating the split, and Donald Trump tapped into that. That really surfaced, Roman, when Barack Obama was elected president. It shocked some people of this nation to see a black man having that position. And you may recall there was something created called the Tea Party. Remember that? That group was created. And they were then trying to, and of course, I was in the Senate at that time. And we couldn't hardly get anything done because they were moving everything to try to stop. And of course, we had the House and the Senate for 2 of those years, but then we had Democrats who were afraid because they want to try to get reelected, and we didn't have enough votes to make all things click that we wanted to click to try to advance the overall America, not just the blacks. Because if you lift the boat up from the bottom, everybody's going to be able to rise. So if you get the blacks who are on the bottom and get them up, and everybody's going to rise, and that's what we were seeking to do. And if you bring America up to that level where everyone has opportunity, regardless of race or color, creed, sexual orientation, or any of those qualifications, then this country would even be at its best. But some people don't want to see that. And that faction was tapped into by Donald Trump. Trump tapped into that, and he's now become the guru of that thinking and that philosophy. And he has following, which is dangerous. That individual came closer than the Civil War of destroying what we call the democracy. He has pushed almost every button that would destroy this experiment that's been going on for 240 years.
But knowing what he was trying to do, and unfortunately, you were not senator at the time. When you push the president to say now it's time to push for a treaty or something concrete to say the South got to remain in their place, and this is the document to prove it? Because right now, the Civil War, they just said, I'm tired of fighting. We're just gonna go, and nothing is concrete, nothing documented saying that. Then the North said we're going to take the victory, but now he mentioned Civil War. He basically tried to jeopardize civil rights. Now that's in the question. The word race is in question. Then what is the purpose of the 14th Amendment?
That's how. By the way, after the Civil War, that's how you got the 13th and 14th Amendments.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was the culmination in order for the South to come back into the Union, that Lincoln really required those states to support and those congressmen to pass so that we could get those amendments through. Getting rid of slavery, and to giving that everyone had rights that could not be abridged. But that 14th Amendment didn't mean anything because of the overall political structure that did not seek to enforce. Lincoln was assassinated. Johnson came in, and that's why naturally slavery had been outlawed, but that's when the laws began to change, and it almost went back to slavery thing called
the Black Code, Jim Crow era.
Jim Crow. But I was thinking about the sharecropping. They would give the black person who was working the land for free. They said, okay, you can have these 40 acres, you own this land, but then you got to pay the owner so much rent, and you never could get out of the debt. So I mean, that was so the sharecropping. Then you moved into Jim Crow, and you moved into these different levels. Of course, then you got the law that was put down in Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896, when it said that the blacks has no rights which whites were due to respect. So you had that type of a environment, and then they came up with separate but equal, and that was not overwritten until Brown versus the Board of Education. That's, by the way, just a little side light. I had the pleasure of being a law student around those lawyers and legal professors who really marshaled that type of arguments to advance the people. And we have made great deal of advancement. But guess what? We have still a long way to go. And given what we're facing today with this fragile situation and Trump having a major following of those individuals who are fearful that they will become dominant to black people or dominant to Hispanic people. I'm not trying to dominate anybody. I just want to have a free life or go and do and have the opportunities and to grow and enjoy like every other individual.
The last time you were here, we discussed former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich appointing you as senator, taking over from former President Barack Obama's seat in Illinois. The former governor sentence has been commuted by Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, have you talked or made contact with the former governor, Blagojevich?
No, I've not talked with him personally, but when he was in prison, I did reach his lawyer to try to get his lawyer to argue to overturn his decision because of quid pro quo issue that it came up before the Supreme Court with the governor of Virginia. The Republican governor of Virginia got his conviction overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court because of the quid pro quo issue, which they could not prove. This is a governor that accepted automobiles. He accepted support for his daughter's wedding. He accepted presents for his wife. And he was then giving other benefits back to this businessman. And they convicted him. But the Supreme Court said that it was not proven that there was a quid pro quo. I tried to get the governor's lawyers that looked at that argument in order to try to get his case overturned. But they looked at it and tried it, but they could not get it argued. In terms of, I had a lot of contact, though, with his wife, with Patty. We did communicate, and I made some public statements to the press and to other areas that 8 years was just far too long for what Rod Blagojevich, was convicted for. 8 years that he served, but his sentence was 14 years. I think that was just, just outrageous to have to, for what was, allegedly attempted to do, is he attempted to sell the seat. There was nothing that transpired. There was no money or anything that changed.
Do you still talk to Patty?
No, I haven't talked to him since he got out. Since he was,
and he hasn't contacted you.
We've not contacted each other. No.
In your book, you mentioned that you do not have any regrets on accepting the appointment for senator. However, do you have any regrets on how your appointment went down in controversy? And some of your political friends didn't want you to accept that position. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, look, I was certainly seeking, because I had run for the United States Senate in 1984. I was beat by Paul Simon in a primary because I know Charles Percy was vulnerable. And I went to then Congressman Paul Simon. He told me he was not going to run for the Senate. So in 1982, I'd just been reelected as state comptroller by the largest margin of any. I led the whole ticket. I got more votes than our gubernatorial candidate, any candidate against the Republican. And so I then started to put together the whole operation of, excuse me.
No problem.
And so after,
no problem. If you want to take a break, we can.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a break right quick.
Mm.
And we're back on Drive at 5 on intellectualradio.com/iHeartRadio station with former Senator Roland Burris. When we last left, I asked you the question. In your book, you mentioned that you do not have any regrets on accepting the appointment for senator. However, do you have any regrets on how your appointment went down in controversy? And some of your political friends didn't want you to accept the position. Tell us about that. You left off describing in 1984
Yeah.
that you were
Yeah.
running for senator.
In '84, I ran in the Democratic primary, and of course, Paul Simon was a congressman, and I approached Paul because I knew if he was going to run for the Senate, he could win it. And this is after we had just elected a mayor in Chicago. Harold Washington was elected mayor in '83, and so I was putting together the campaign because the election was in '84. So I started putting together my operation to run for the Senate, and I called Simon. He said he wasn't going to run. Paul said that he would support me at the right time. So that was around April, and of course I put together the campaign. I was getting ready to announce in June, and I got a call in early June from Paul Simon. Said, Roland, I've been approached by the senators out here in D.C., and they want me to run for the Senate. I said, well, what are you going to do, Paul? And of course, Paul indicated he didn't know, but he'd get back to me. Well, I said, okay, but my campaign I'm getting ready to announce in 2 weeks. So, I'm going to announce my candidacy. I did in June of 1983. And so I announced my candidacy. And a few days later, I get the call from Paul, and he says, they have agreed to raise all this money for me and to back me. And therefore, I'm going to run for the Senate. I said, okay, well, Paul, I've already announced for the Senate, and we'll, just have to see that whoever win. The idea is that we want to take out the incumbent Senator Charles Percy. So let's just make sure we have a good campaign. Well, in that primary, there was also Phil Rock and Alex C. So there were four of us in that primary, and Paul Simon beat me by 90,000 votes in the primary. I backed Paul Simon, campaigned for him throughout Illinois. He was able to beat Charles Percy. So that's how Paul Simon got in to become the United States Senator in 1984. And so I had, eyes on, having been in the comptroller's office, been comptroller for 2 terms. Naturally, I was seeking whether or not I had the wherewithal to move up to higher position. And of course, it was in uh, oh I ran for re-election in '86 as state comptroller, and I was reelected. So I served 3 terms, as it's 12 years as the state comptroller, and of course, in the 4th term, I became attorney general. Well, looking at that whole operation, I was going to run for governor because that's when Jim Thompson had decided he was not going to run. But then we had to put together with the Democratic Party, we put together a ticket. It was a compromise. The compromise was that Hartigan would run for governor, I would run for attorney general, and the lady who had taken my position when I became attorney general as comptroller was Don Clark Netsch. and she ran for comptroller. So the Democrats put together a team, and we ran as a ticket. Well, most of us won. Netch won for comptrollership. I won as the Attorney General. Hardigan lost to Edgar. Edgar became the governor then. And so, I stayed very active, but I also kept my eyes on, either the governorship or the Senate, because that's where I was going. It's about, now I'm going to deviate and go back to 1963.
Okay.
1963. What happened then? Well, I graduated from law school. I was in Washington, D.C. The day after graduation, I packed my wife and packed my car up, and my wife, and we headed back to Chicago. I looked at my wife and says, "Honey, I got to get out of D.C. because, I want to go into politics." And then it's not politics in D.C. All it is just government. And I wanted to be elected. I said, "Honey, I would only come back to Washington under two conditions." "Oh, what was that, Roland?" I said, "Well, I would only come back as Vice President of the United States or as a United States Senator." Okay, fast forward then to then when I started running. But let me back up a little bit. Why did I say Vice President, Roman?
Okay. Why you say vice president
Because I did not believe there would ever be a black man elected president of the United States.
or a black woman elected vice president?
Well, no, but that time, I'm talking about this time.
Oh,
This is
okay.
1963.
Okay, gotcha.
I did not think that there'd be a black man elected president. So I said vice president. But guess what? America elected a black man president, and I took his Senate seat and came to the United States Senate. What did I say in 1963? And this was in 2008.
Right.
I made it to Washington, D.C. as a United States Senator. Two goals. Every goal that I set in politics, I was able to achieve. And so running for that having been appointed for that office, I had the skills and the ability to be a public servant. So that's how you get your training, you get your experience. I didn't just jump out there and run for the Senate like some people are doing now without any political experience, any background, any office holding. What have you done to really be able to convince the people that you are a person that they should vote for? And we have individuals who jump out here. I can't jump out here and be a brain surgeon. You want me to operate on you?
No.
No. Not.
But do you think the Democratic Party turned their back on you?
In some instances, it would certainly it did in terms of when I was running for governor in 2000 and I'm sorry, in 1994, they decided not to back a candidate. So they had Don Netch and Dick Phelan, who was the county board president, in a Democratic primary. I lost to Netch by 25 or 30,000 votes in a Democratic primary for governor because the party decided first time they had not endorsed a gubernatorial candidate in almost 4 years. And so there was, all this opposition to my trying to be, and I ran for governor in the primary 3 times and lost all 3. And I say that having been with the most experience, there's no one in Illinois government that spent 20 years. I'd been the administrative vice president by being in the governor's cabinet. Governor Dan Walker, I ran the operations called General Services that operates the government, all the telephone system, all the communications, so and all the vehicles, all the buildings, to supply to the state agencies. So I knew Illinois government very well. And then I became the comptroller. I was the chief financial officer for the state. And I became the chief legal officer for the state. There was no candidate better qualified. If I was in the corporate world, that's what you do. You take those tiers, you take those steps, and you advance up to these higher levels of higher responsibility. And so I was really prepared to be United States Senator. And I think that for reasons I know, which primarily was based on race, Illinois was not ready for a black man to be governor of the state. And so the party
Do you
did,
think
did not back him.
Illinois right now, as we speak, is ready for a black governor?
They, do you know what Illinois has now that no other state has ever had? Out of the 6 constitutional officers, Illinois has 3 blacks. Half of them are black. Only 2 of them are white. One is Hispanic. So Illinois has progressed. Illinois is the only state to send 3 black senators to Washington.
But what I'm saying right now, do you think they're ready for a black governor?
I think they are.
In your personal opinion, right now, here on IntellectualRadio.com, who would you like right now? We talked about black leadership, leads to this question. Who would Roland Burris would like to see in that governor's seat?
Gosh, it all depends on the talent that come forward. I could not project a name. You have a black lady who's lieutenant governor, um, and I know that there was a white lady who was a lieutenant governor, and she ran for governor, and Illinois was not ready for a woman governor, white woman governor. Okay, and when Illinois, when Dawn Netsch beat me in the primary, she ran against Jim Edgar. Jim Edgar beat her with the largest margin of any gubernatorial race in the history of Illinois. So I don't know, in terms of a black, I would say that Illinois has advanced tremendously in terms of electing, because I was not elected United States Senator, but I was appointed, but we elected a black woman, United States Senator. Illinois did. Carol Moseley Braun, the first black woman elected, Democrat or Republican, to the United States Senate. And she was the second black popularly elected. We had 3 senators prior to Carol Moseley Braun being elected. And the first black elected senator was Ed Brooke from Massachusetts. The other 2 came after the Civil War was Hiram Revel and Kelso Bruce came out of the appointments when the senators were elected by the state legislature. And of course, the constitutional amendment changed that, where senators became popularly elected. So in Illinois, elected Carol Braun. Illinois elected Rod Blagojevich statewide. No state. Now you look at this, I'm really.
But I think, because of timing, I really think that Illinois, in some ways, I can agree, but I can also disagree with the advancement, because I think the state can be progressive at times. And I also think we're lagging behind with laws, legislation. People who's right for the position don't get elected or supported by the Democratic Party. And then I can also say that, we have people in office that basically don't push or support younger generations of leaders.
Well, it's not the role of the politician to. What the politician can do is to lay the groundwork and be the example, and then try to have a following that would follow them persons in the public office. I mean, or how about situation with back to my brain surgery example? Everybody think that they can be a politician. Everybody can't be. Most of people jump up and run for office has no business in running for office. And some of them stumble around and get elected. You know who had no business running for office and got elected?
Who?
Donald Trump. He was shocked when he got elected. He was just out there trying to,
But he led the groundwork for the trouble that, like, falsely elected and falsely he led the groundwork. But let me say this.
Yes.
Secretary of State Jesse White is retiring, the longest serving Secretary of State of Illinois history. Anything you might want to say to him about his retirement? You retired, now he's retired.
Well, and what we tried to do was to get a black man to replace him. but he lost the primary. There was a black city councilman by the name of David Moore running for Jesse White's seat. And of course, who was nominated by the party? Giannoulis, who didn't back me, wanted me to resign from the United States Senate, by the way, when he ran for that seat and lost. So you in dealing with the political arena, it's a very, very, I'm just trying to
strange bedfellows.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to choose just correct words because I don't want to have to try to explain something, say something that I, didn't make clear. But everybody cannot be a politician, and those who are politicians are sometimes not public servants. My whole role was that I was a public servant and not a politician, because I looked for not the next election. Politicians go from election to elections. Public servants go from generation to generation. Where he's trying to pass policies and set examples and grow things where that individual would then be a role model and a trailblazer for those who come behind. The politician, and this is what some people get elected. They are politicians because they're now trying to get their survival, and they're going to where the money is, they're going to where the pressure is, they're going to where the support is.
What would be your legacy you want people to remember you by?
That Roland Burris was a trailblazer. That if you look at all the firsts that I was able to overcome, that the Lord blessed me to have those skills and ability to be the first Black elected statewide in the history of Illinois, be the first Black to examine banks in the United States of America. The comptroller of the currency was created in 1863. They did not elect not from the Treasury Department of the federal government. They did not have a Black national bank examiner until 1963, when I was by the Treasury Department as the first Black. And in the banking business, I was the first Black officer of the biggest bank in the state when I was in the financial world. I set the example there and brought in several Blacks to work in the biggest bank in our state. So Roland Burris has all types of accomplishments. Even in my undergraduate studies, I was the first Black to get a scholarship to be an exchange student to the University of Hamburg when I graduated from SIU Carbondale, and I went to work on international law at the University of Hamburg in Germany. So 2 students left SIU as exchange, and 2 Germans came to America. So my legacy is what my book says. I was a trailblazer.
All
I
right.
was a pioneer.
And on that note, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you. Don't be a stranger, my man.
Oh, well, look, I'm retired, completely retired. Roman, only you could have got me out here to do this. I mean,
nobody else but me. Okay.
I'm hanging up. I'm counseling and talking and trying to run my mouth.
There you go. But don't be a stranger. We'll be back after this. I am so sorry. We'll be back after this.